Hi, I'm pleased to introduce three speakers, Xavier Irias, Elizabeth Bialek, and Dennis Crichton-Karame. Please tell me if I'm butchering that, Dennis. They are with us from the East Bay Municipal Utility District. And for those of you who don't know, East Bay does water in a very big way. I had the good fortune of visiting their facility and working with these folks, and it's one heck of an impressive operation. Xavier is the Director of Engineering and Construction for East Bay MUD. He has over 20 years of experience as a professional civil engineer in California. His emphasis is water infrastructure, including planning, design, and construction of major waterworks facilities and pipelines. In his current role, Mr. Irias is the Director of Engineering and Construction at East Bay Municipal Utility District, or EBMUD, a water wastewater utility in Oakland, California, with over 1.3 million customers. Mr. Irias has lead responsibility within the organization to plan and execute the $1 billion capital program. Throughout his career, he has leveraged technology, generally with a focus on infrastructure management. To this end, he has directed and personally developed many technology initiatives, including use of CAD, GIS databases, web applications, and modeling applications. He is an expert in dozens of different application platforms, including various .NET and Java systems. Look, y'all, I have the privilege of knowing Javi. Not only can he design something, but he can sling some serious code. So all these folks have some mad skills. Ms. Elizabeth Bialek is Manager of Engineering Services. She oversees a staff of approximately 60 technicians, clerks, engineers, and programmers that provide engineering and drafting services to support the department's annual capital program. Among her duties, she manages EBMUD's mapping unit, which maintains GIS data for East Bay MUD's water treatment and distribution system. In her role, she also oversees their dam safety program and has actively advanced emergency response and recovery within her department. Liz is a graduate of UC Berkeley with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and a master's in geotechnical engineering. She has over 20 years of professional civil engineering experience working in the water and wastewater industry, both in the private and public sector. And Dennis is the GIS mapping supervisor for EBMUD. He leads their mapping services unit and has over 20 years of experience in the water and wastewater industry. The majority of his experience has been supporting design and construction efforts, and now he thrives on the challenges of maintaining and providing accurate water supply and distribution system information to meet the diverse needs of multiple departments and the public. Dennis and his staff of 6 skilled GIS technicians maintain EBMUD's water supply and distribution system, piping network, and data. They also rapidly complete hundreds of public requests for water system information every year with the goal of providing excellent customer service, and I must say that they do. So it is without much further ado, well, actually it is a little further ado. I'd like to again note that it is through your membership that we're able to bring you webinar presentations like the one today. If you're not a member, strongly encourage you to visit gita.org and sign up. Memberships for everybody from students through businesses through individual memberships. So please hit gita.org and join now. And with that, let me pass it off to the crew from East Bay MUD. Welcome.
Thank you, Talbot. This is Xavier. And of course, I am here with Elizabeth and Dennis. I think I'll start. One thing I wanted to ask before we get into it, can everyone see the whole screen? Because we see a chat window overlaying our PowerPoint. And if that's a distraction, we can get it out of the way. But I don't know if anyone else even sees it.
I don't see it. It looks good from here. But I will have the chat window up here as the moderator. And if anybody has comments or questions or difficulties, please send me, Talbot Brooks, a chat message, and I will do my best to resolve whatever the issue may be.
Okay, so we'll get into it. Thank you for the long introduction, and I hope we can live up to everything that you said that was nice about us. So we're going to advance to the first real slide. This is our outline. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about who East Bay Mud is and what our overall mission is as a water utility. And then Dennis will run through the remainder of all these points here with some help from Elizabeth probably along the way. Talk about what we're trying to accomplish with mapping in general, the roles and responsibilities, and why do we do it. And then we have a long history. I'll show you. We've been in existence since 1923. So, of course, like everyone else, probably in that situation, we had to go through multiple conversions. One of them is from paper and Mylar to digital platforms. And we'll talk about how we selected the software and hardware that we did, and some of the things we've learned along the way, like the importance of data quality, and how to cope with the continual change as technology evolves. And then what we see as kind of the road ahead, the next steps. And then we'll take some questions. And I think, Talbot, as you said, if people have questions that occur to them along the way, they're going to type them to you. Is that right, in the chat window?
That is correct. Send them in to me, and I'll line them up in the queue, and then we'll put your feet to the fire when you're done.
Okay. So this is where we are, and I think it's, there we go. So the San Francisco Bay Area, we're not a city utility. Actually, we are a public utility, but we have 31 different cities and counties that we serve all or part of. So it kind of makes our job complicated. And in terms of its impact on GIS, it means we have all kinds of legacy systems going back to 1923 when we first were formed from a bunch of other kind of things like the People's Water Company and some that probably didn't have a name. So we have a lot of legacy data. The oldest kind of mapping data we have in our system literally goes back almost to gold rush times. We have tap papers, that is like customer hookups, dating to the 1860s. And that's a vast system. So over time we've grown. We have over 4,000 miles of pipe, and that's just part of what we map. We have hundreds of facilities. And our big focus is water because we have more water customers than anything else, but we also do about 650,000 wastewater customers, and of course the piping and treatment that goes with that. And we do a little bit of power. We're doing maybe more power as time goes on, but we have 2 hydropower plants and then a bunch of kind of small-scale plants. So as I said, water is the big thing that we do, and this is kind of showing you how we get water from the Sierra Nevada foothills, and that's a very clean source, and you can see our main water storage there. Then we have 90 miles of aqueducts that carry the water from that location to our service area. So of course that's part of our GIS too. Now Dennis is going to get into what the mapping section, that's his direct responsibility, really what it is he does and why.
Thank you, Xavier. Thanks for warming up the audience for me. So what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit more about the detail on what our section does. So basically our main roles and responsibilities are creating and maintaining the database and graphics for the overall system map that cover that service area that serves the 1.3 million customers. Then collecting and entering the data from a variety of internal departments, which I'll cover a little bit later or show you. And then responding to internal and external mapping requests. We often get a lot of requests from other utilities or other companies or developers or even homeowners wondering where the pipes lie within the roadways, where their service connections are, other basic information like that. So what our primary objectives here in the mapping group are to continue to look at our data quality and try to improve its accuracy and usability for this group and for the rest of the district. Eliminate redundancies is another biggie and more recent. In the past, our data back in when we first started inputting it into an MGE system, which I'll talk more about, that data was taken and converted and input into other systems. And over time, we've ended up maintaining duplicate information just because of the compatibility of different software. Well, now it seems like software is talking more with each other than it ever did before. So we're looking at eliminating some of those redundancies and some of those duplicate tables and combining them again back into one table and maintaining just that one table and sharing that throughout the company. And then lastly, our major objective now is to minimize our backlog of data or projects. The mapping group gets the individual design projects or constructed projects that happen out in the field to support the development of new areas or maintenance or replacement, pipe replacements. So we get that information in, and then we have to update our maps to show the either new piping or the replacement projects or the replacement pipes. So during our most recent transition from our MGE product to the GIS platform, we incurred a lot of backlog in that just because of that transition. So we're working on reducing that backlog to a minimum so we can provide better information for our field crew and throughout the rest of the district. Here's just a sampling of the data that we have to input into our system and maintain. Stuff like the pipes and valves and hydrants, corrosion protection, and that we get from a couple different groups, the pipeline infrastructure and maintenance construction group. Stuff like pressure zones, which our planning group provides us. Then we have properties and right-of-way and land-based information that we get from the cities and counties, our own real estate, and our survey group. We have the aqueducts, the 90 miles of pipe, and our facilities, those 340-some-odd facilities that we need to keep maintained on our system map. And then, of course, we get field changes. There's emergency projects that happen, and they have to replace a piece of pipe or install a new valve, get that information as well. And then data correction. So to go back a little bit in time, years ago, as you can imagine, when we took over the system in 1923 and got a bunch of drawings from different agencies or companies, I guess, that was done with pen and paper, and that was actually transferred to an overall system map on pen and mylar, which is like if you don't know, it goes way back, a piece of plastic, basically. And in case you're wondering, no, that's not a picture of me on the screen there, but we took that information and we took all the individual jobs and placed them on an overall set of system maps using the pen and mylar. And then our first transition was about the mid-'80s where we started to use CAD. So we started to use a computer to trace over and input all that information in just a CAD format. So it didn't have any intelligence to the graphic data, so everything was just labeled on the map itself. Then we switched to, we stayed with its Intergraph, which was later Bentley, MicroStation product, into an Intergraph MGE. And basically what that did is it took the CAD engine of MicroStation and overlaid data, the ability to attach data to those graphic elements. So it was then part of adding all that data that was on a CAD drawing into a database to produce our maps. So there were some issues, so initially we had to get that transition from paper to CAD. So you had to take all those maps, as you can imagine, and register them in the space that they actually covered electronically, and trace over the lot lines and street lines and pipes, and then start to read the stuff like the street names or addresses, and pipe information, pressure zones, and type that into the database and add that, make sure that agreed with the map. The only problem with doing something like that is you have typographical errors. You run into a lot of issues where someone could have just mistyped something. There's data and graphics that might have been overlooked. Someone didn't quite get everything added. There's data that may not have been attached to the correct element. So someone might have filled out some piping information, but attached it to the wrong pipe. Then you also could have duplicate information attached to two different elements. And then there's the issue of the piping networks as well. So everything was going along fine for about 10 years or so. And in the mid-90s, we received a letter from Intergraph saying that they would no longer support the MGE platform. So we did what any respectable business person would do, and first we panicked. And then we took a step back and thought, this actually gives us an opportunity. And there was something that a sort of smart guy once said, that in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. So we thought, well, this is our chance to really look at whether we wanted to stay with the Intergraph platform and go to this, convert to this new version of that, or whether we need to take a look at other pieces of software and see what might work best for the district and our ratepayers. So of course we started looking into the system selection, the cost of different products out there, how upgrades are handled, how easy it is to install, what kind of training would be needed, how that's going to impact the workforce, what kind of help can we get, is it going to be a reliable product for the future. So before purchasing, we obviously looked at how is that, the different software packages, how do they maintain and capture that data and store it, and how is that managed, how can we retrieve that information, what kind of analysis that can we do on the information, and how is that going to be graphically displayed to the users. And then we made a selection. We said, okay, this is the item that we're going to look at purchasing and test it out and make sure it looks like it works and fits our needs. And then question and make sure that we've covered all the bases. And then the idea was to repeat that process if needed, if we didn't end up getting a good product. And after all that process, there was a decision to purchase the ESRI ArcGIS product. Now, how that differed from the MGE is that MGE used the CAD engine, so basically graphics that were put on in the computer, and then data was attached to those graphics. Well, the difference about the ArcGIS package is you had data that it maintained, and it created the graphics from the data. So what it ended up doing is it showed us the importance of having quality data, because in that instance you couldn't have duplicate information. The system wouldn't let us put the same information on two different pipes. So that told us the importance of our data, and that really what it all is about as far as in GIS in many different fields is you really have to take a look at the strength of your GIS or data intelligence. And then also, how do you continue to build on that strength? What can you do to enhance it? So that reminded me of a little comic strip that I saw that has come up throughout my career is the data or the information that you're putting in a drawing or in a database or anywhere else, does it have to be that accurate? And what it comes down to is without a good, solid, accurate foundation of data, it's hard to build anything substantial on top of that. So what that's sort of led us into is a best practice of treating every request as an opportunity to improve our data accuracy and usability. And how that works out is instead of, you know, you can go through the whole system and spend years tweaking it and perfecting it, or which means everything else stops, or you take every request for information as an opportunity to evaluate that portion of the data and rework it or tweak it or improve it as those requests come in. So that's sort of the way that we've chosen, is to treat any request as that opportunity to improve that portion of that data. So which sort of brings me to data, and is all data that you can get good? and that brought me to another comic strip, the maps to the crime scenes of the stars. You know, who knows where this guy got his data? Maybe he got it from the police department, and maybe it's really good quality data, or they've been maintaining it for years. But then on the flip side, it's, okay, I don't know about you, but I don't know if I want to be driving to every crime scene around Hollywood or wherever else it might be. I prefer to stay away from those areas. So just because you have data that could be used or put into your system doesn't mean it's relevant or going to be beneficial to other users. So there is some things that you have to look at to decide whether your data is beneficial to put into your system or not, such as, does it improve the usefulness? Can it increase the accuracy of what you already have? Can it provide better access to information in general? Maybe it's a way that if it's in your map, it doesn't take someone, they don't have to go through a more difficult process to find that information. Or even know, they don't need to know who to talk to, they can find it all on your map. Does it enhance your system development? Is it the direction you want to take your GIS system? Can it eliminate duplication? Sort of what I was talking about earlier is if we can consolidate some data, maybe we can eliminate the duplication of efforts throughout the district or your company. Does it improve overall efficiency? You know, can that quick access to that information help a lot of people out? And then does it build upon the knowledge for the district and for ratepayers and what else? So that building on that knowledge, I think that sort of brings up to me, we're used to having information at our fingertips. And what we've, you know, learned here, and I'm sure many people have, is that you know, at home, I can be on my smartphone and say, okay, I'm looking for an Italian restaurant that's within 10 miles from home, that is good for, provides a nice family environment, that's relatively inexpensive. And you have that information just at your fingertips. So there's an expectation now at work that we be able to provide that same level of access or information to our users, whether it's field crews, whether it's other staff within the district, or even some of the public. So that brings up, well, you know, how do we keep up with this changing environment and that continual need for information? And some ways you could do that are to beta test new versions of the software you already use. And a good one is utilizing free online training and tutorials and resources. And most other companies and software vendors provide a lot of that stuff. So it's relatively easily accessible, and it's free, which is always a good thing. Research software packages and learn about them, and that'll help you remain current, new software packages. And another one that I found really helpful is looking for events and open houses and user groups that are in your area. So it's easily accessible, and you end up meeting a lot of different people who use the software in different ways, and maybe not even the way you would typically use it to do your job, but it can help you think sort of outside the box on your daily work and how to approach your issues. And then there's several different subscriptions to free newsletters or blogs that you can sign up for to have that information and see what's going on in the GIS field.
I will just add a comment to that, Dennis. I'm sure a lot of our audience probably is aware of that, but we've been working on our GIS conversion for years, and there were times when we were truly frustrated with data problems, and it was truly valuable to reach out to others and kind of meet people that are going through the same thing and compare notes, because there are those times in any conversion where things are difficult, and really to keep up looking at all of these sources is the best way.
All right, so just to sort of sum this up, where we're at now as far as East Bay Mud and our next steps. we're on the back side of the technology bell curve as far as the version of software that we're using. So one of our primary objectives now is to get more on the top or even to the front of that technology bell curve and remain there. So we need to get our software upgraded and continue to remain current. I think that conversion process of going from MGE to ArcGIS was more difficult than we originally anticipated, so we got a little on the back side of that upgrade curve. So we're looking to get on the front of that wave, so to say. Another thing is, just recently we've been looking into standardized information or data models. There's some development going on where they've actually standardized table names and the way the databases are set up. And we feel like if we convert from our own custom model to this standardized model, it'll be able to better align us to other utilities and then hopefully even better to respond and share information and help each other out in emergencies. As well as with this standardized, if we pick a standardized data model, it'll let us take advantage of free maps and apps that are developed using, say, the table names from that standardized model. So hopefully it'll help us progress more quickly in the future as the technology continues to change. Then we are still working on paper maps in our field, although we're transitioning to tablets and getting that information out to the field crews and more web-based applications. But that'll be one of our next focuses as well. If we can provide these maps with the information up to date on a daily basis to our field crews, that's going to be a great benefit. And then once we get to that realm, the next step will be to integrate the work order management system, our work orders. And so the field crews can see what kind of work in the area has happened over history, at least as long as we've have data for that, as well as internal people as well, and they'll be able to have a more informed view of what's going on in a certain area and may even change the direction on upgrades and improvements that we perform. And then lastly but not least, as I mentioned before, is a hard look at minimizing our duplicate efforts for data entry or just maintaining information and consolidating the multiple tables into one that everybody has access for, and that and no one's spending time duplicating that effort. So with that, I think we're ready to address any questions. And just before we do that, though, I'd like to thank you for attending and encourage you to contact Xavier, Elizabeth, or myself if you have any questions or would like to think of anything after the webinar or would like to discuss anything with us.
Hey, that's really good stuff. Again, on behalf of GITA, we'd like to thank the three of you for presenting. We have received several fantastic questions here. The first I'd like to ask is, do you maintain a public-facing portion of your GIS, and if so, what data do you make available?
I think the answer is not much. We don't make our data generally available on our public site. Essentially, it's security concerns that, I think pre-9/11, a lot of utilities were thinking about, how could we make more of our utility information more freely available? And then I think everybody, including us, decided to put that way on the back burner after 9/11.
Okay, another one is your customer database for billing maintained separately from your GIS, or do you share it across with the customer data?
It is a separate system for billing, however, and they aren't linked, is that correct?
They are separate databases, but their information is compared against our maps, and then we get a list of any inconsistencies. So then it allows us the opportunity to dig a little deeper and see if there's an issue on their end or our end. but there's some compatibility issues, I guess, mostly with the street addresses. Their data maintains a numeric, then a street name, and then a street type like road, street, way, where ours is all combined. So we do get flags that even though the information's the same, it's just how the data is stored. So we're aware of that, and that's part of what we're looking at, reducing some of the duplication. If we can get the format on both sides the same, then that'll greatly reduce the flags that we get that we fortunately can just check off and say, well, it's just more of a formatting issue.
So Zav knows the question I'm going to ask here then. Since you're having challenges with addressing, what's the role of something like the U.S. National Grid in your GIS as it exists now, and what are your plans?
You know, we do think that the National Grid is really where we ought to be moving for our basic grid that we have our crews use to navigate with out in the field. We do have a legacy grid. It's based on a California Zone 3 against the 1927 datum. And that has obvious problems. No one's using that 27 anymore, for one thing. And so they're all using, you know, GPS information, which is against a different datum. And that grid runs out of gas when you get out of our immediate service area. You're not supposed to be in Zone 3 anymore. So we have those problems that no one necessarily thought was a huge deal back in 1927 or even in 1950 something, but now that grid is increasingly a problem. So we do need a basic grid where we can tell our crews, hey, go to these coordinates. So I think that definitely we see a place for National Grid, and we're incorporating National Grid on the latest generations of our Atlas series.
So just a couple more questions. One, what is the role of metadata and how are you maintaining it? Because it sounds like you're updating the data as you touch it. So how do you know what's been updated when, and how does that translate into metadata records?
That information is all kept in the database as far as who edits, makes the edits, and when they make that edit. So that history is all kept.
If I could add something to that, I think that it is kind of a big picture concern for us is if we wanted to increase the accuracy of some of our information and start to accept survey grade information into the GIS, then the metadata gets to be even more important, particularly in our area because we have a lot of seismicity. So we have, you know, our survey points moving at a noticeable velocity. So if they were surveyed 10 years ago, for example, their information, that's no longer valid. You know, if you go out there, you'll find that it may have moved by inches. And that's not a big deal for some things, but if it's a property corner or something, it is. So we are kind of wrestling with that. You know, do we have kind of a real-time resolution of all those different datums, not only datums, but epochs that go with them. In other words, the timestamp of when that information was gathered.
Okay. Another one, are you implementing an asset management program, and does it tie to the GIS?
We are, and I think what we want to do actually is we're revisiting that in the next year or two, because we certainly use the GIS right now to do things like analyze pipe breaks and prioritize replacements and figure out which of those pipeline replacements can be effectively clustered, which ones are next to sensitive watersheds, things like that. But we do want to look at, can we do a more off-the-shelf solution? Because we're using a lot of custom code that's kind of left over from the 1980s, 1990s. And I think we can buy more of that instead of modernizing what we have.
And that gets back to the look at using more of a standardized data model. If we can go that route, ESRI has something that's called a local government information model. And basically that's just structuring the tables and the data in a certain way that now they're developing apps and maps that already know those table names, so they can query that information and use that, and they have stuff like a fire hydrant inspection app. Or valve maintenance or rotation app. So they're developing a lot of these to help, I think, predominantly smaller companies as well as larger ones get into the GIS world more easily, and they'll be continuing to update those, so it's easier to stay current on that stuff rather than write your own custom app.
Right, so that's a question that's popped up here in the chat window about 3-4 times. What industry data model are you looking to use in the future, and how is your planning process working in terms of getting there?
That's a good question. Right now it is, the one that we're looking at is the local government information model that ESRI's developed. And then sort of the package is ArcGIS for water utilities, which covers water, wastewater, and storm. So we're in the process of converting we're at 9.3, ArcGIS 9.3. So we're going to be going to 10 and 10.1 soon. So basically at 10.1, and they just released 10.2. So once that sort of gets flushed out a little bit, we'll be switching over to 10.2. So the plan is to do some more work on the data in the 9.3 environment as we get it switched over to 10 or 10.1. If we can go directly into 10.1, that would even be better. So that, to us, is sort of a natural time to try to fold in this standardized data model. ESRI's right now, they're actually taking a look at our tables and our information to give us some feedback on how that transition would take place.
A couple more real solid questions here. Do y'all contemplate any base data sharing, or do you currently share any base data, particularly with like Alameda and Contra Costa counties?
You know, we've looked at that several times. One of the problems is that we need the base information sooner than it's publicly available, because at the point that tentative maps are being filed and we're looking at water service, that's when we ideally want it on our maps. So timing is one issue. The other has been because, you know, our GIS system has been sort of a caricature cartoon of the system. Things don't line up perfectly when we import them. So we're looking at various ways to approach that, definitely taking, for example, developer drawings with lot data and bringing that in, but that is a challenge, and we're finding the best way to do it.
Yeah, if I could elaborate on that, I think can we get to one of the map samples?
Yeah, and I think folks were thinking particularly about like the cadastral layer, right?
Yeah, I wanted to highlight something that I think Elizabeth said. I think she talked about one of the barriers to data sharing. The way we represent our maps, our pipes, if you look at this map here, the property boundaries are in their actual location, but the pipes are not. The pipes actually, as they've been drafted since the 1920s, they've been drawn kind of for cartographic clarity above all. And that means that if you get to a congested intersection where there's lots of pipes that meet, the mappers over time, they will drag the pipe to where it doesn't really actually belong there, but they move it there so that you can still read the map. And you know, in a modern world of GIS and where you're trying to do overlays of different utilities, that starts to sound increasingly untenable. So we're really thinking, well, we might need to change that. And one of the big benefits would be for better data sharing.
Sure, sure. Well, and that's the big rat's nest of how do we get the ortho to line up with the cadastral, to line up with the center line. So I think that's an issue everybody's pretty painfully aware of.
Yeah, we are looking into whether, because we're sort of taking a second look at all of our maps as we do this from the conversion from MGE to GIS. So we're just starting to analyze the differences of the county-based map compared to ours to see if it's even feasible to start pulling in some of that data. If it's pretty close, then I think the process we'll do is, even if we only get the data late, we could sketch in a tentative lot line placement until we get the final data from the county. And that way we're still using their base. The big advantage is you've got all their parcels that are already cut up. They know what address they are. They have information, additional information that we don't currently maintain. That'll help us out quite a bit. So we're always looking at, are there other resources for the same information? It sort of goes back to that duplication of effort. We don't want to be maintaining a base map ultimately if we can avoid it, but we'll have to see how that flushes out.
And one last question here. Does your GIS inform hydraulic modeling efforts and vice versa? How do those things come into play?
Several years ago, actually, we did look at integrating GIS with hydraulic modeling, and so we've done so. And at the time, it was we really looked around, and it wasn't something you could buy. So we went to quite a bit of effort. We, of course, had to restructure our whole database to make it work because you need to model the pipes at a more granular level to do hydraulic modeling. So we went through that, and to this day, most of our hydraulic modeling is actually built off of the GIS. That's been pretty successful. I think it would be far easier if we were starting today than it was when we first did it. It was a monumental effort.
Well, I think that about gets all of the questions. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for participating. This is a great turnout. We've had over 75 on the call. We will have some upcoming webinars about the use of oblique imagery and about GIS in the oil and gas transmission pipeline industry coming up. So stay tuned for those. We're starting to get our schedule worked out in advance a little further, so look forward to that calendar getting published. And again, I'd like to encourage everybody, please help support us by becoming a member of GITA. You can join us by visiting www.gita.org, and there is a join section for members. This webinar is available for free from everyone, for everyone rather, on the GITA webpage. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please don't hesitate to email me at president@gita.org. I'd be happy to help you carry on this conversation with the good folks from East Bay Mud further, or just answer any questions regarding the organization and just generally assist you with geospatial. So again, thanks for your time and attention, and we look forward to having you join us for our next webinar.